Hi guys, welcome back to another interesting tutorial. My name is Chine. If this is your first time here, you're welcome, and if you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for being here. In today's video, I'm going to be taking you guys through the process of making this two-piece. This is a top and a skirt. Okay, so if you would love to learn how I made this, please keep watching and don't forget to subscribe. Turn on your notification bell so that anytime I upload a new video, you'll be notified. To make this, I'll be using 3.5 yards of organza fabric and 1.5 yard of cotton lining. Please, if you're going to make this, buy 4 yards. I had to manage this 3.5. It was almost not enough. Okay, then you can buy 2 yards of cotton lining. So let's get into the tutorial. Before I start, I would like to show you guys the style inspiration for this two-piece. This is the style inspiration, but instead of making the halter neck top, I had to change it to a normal top with sleeves. So to start with, I'm going to get the length of my top. The length of my top is 18 inches. After that, I'm going to divide my bust measurement by 2. Then I'll divide it again by 2. One side will be for the front and the other side will be for the back. I'm going to get the shoulder to bust point and the shoulder to under bust. Now this is just me drafting the basic bodies. I'll go ahead and label the bust point, the under bust, and the half length. The half length is the full length of my top. The next thing I'm going to do is to get the shoulder measurement. My shoulder measurement is 14 inches. If I divide it by 2, I'll have 7. Then I'll come down by 1 inch for the shoulder slant. I'll use my ruler to draw a slant line. Then I'll get the neck width and the neck depth. For the neck width, I'll be using 3 inches. For the depth, I'll be using 7 inches because the neck is a V-neck. Then I'll use my ruler to connect the neck. The next thing I'm going to get is my chest line. For the chest line, I'm going to be using 6.5. So to get your chest line, just divide your bust measurement by 6 and add 1 inch. If you want it a bit loose, you can add 1.5, but I'm using 6.5 for the chest line. So I'll draw a straight line all the way to the back. Then it's time for me to get the armhole. From the shoulder slant, I'm going to draw a straight line to the chest line. I'll divide this line by 2, then I'll come in by ½ inch. I'm going to use my ruler to draw the armhole line. I'm going to do exactly the same thing for the back. For the neck width and neck depth of the back, I'm going to be using 3 inches for the neck width and 1 inch for the neck depth. I'm done with the back at this point. The next thing I'm going to do is to start imputing my measurement. I'm going to divide my bust measurement by 4. I'm going to do the same thing for the waist. Now I'm using exactly my bust and waist measurement. I'm not even adding that to this top. So I'm using exactly my measurement. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing I did in front. I'm going to do it for the back. After getting the back measurement as well, I'll go ahead and cut out this pattern. It's time for me to transfer this pattern to fabric. So for allowance, I'm going to add ½ inch round, then 1.5 on the side for my sewing allowance. I'm going to place this on my lining and cut out as well. After cutting the front and back, I'll show you guys how to cut the skirt. So this is my lining. I'm going to cut out the front and the back exactly the same way I cut the main fabric. It's time for me to cut out the lining of the skirt. This lining was not enough for the skirt. I had to join it at the back. I had to really manage this lining. For the lining of the skirt, there are 2 ways you can go about it. The first way is to cut a 180-degree flare for the lining of the skirt. And the second way is to cut an A-line skirt, especially if you don't have enough lining for the skirt. A-line will just work best for you. For the length of my skirt, I'm going to be using 13 inches. The next thing I'm going to do is to get my waist measurement. I'll divide it by 4. Then I'll add 2 inches allowance. I just ruled out my hip length. Then I'll divide my hip by 4 and add 2 inches allowance. This skirt is not meant to be tight at all. It's an A-line skirt and is meant to be free because of the flare I'm going to put on top of it. Okay, so I'm going to add 2 inches extra to my hip measurement. Then I'll connect to the full length of my skirt. I'll just go ahead and cut out the skirt. I was honestly trying to manage the lining. After cutting out the front, I'll go ahead and cut out the back. I'll just add 1 inch for zip allowance for the back. So this is what the skirt looks like after cutting. For the down part of the skirt, you can use 12 inches for the measurement or 13 so that the A-line will be a bit wide. So the next thing I'm going to show you guys is the placement of the flare. To get the length of the flare, I'm going to divide the length of my skirt by 3. So I got 14 inches, which simply means the first flare will start from the top of the skirt and stop exactly at 14 inches. Okay, now the second flare is going to start 2 inches above where the first flare stopped. To get where the third flare will start, I'm going to place my tape on 12 inches. That's where the second flare started. Okay, so I'm going to place my tape there and measure exactly 14 inches. This is where the second flare will stop. Okay, then I'll also go up by 2 inches, which is 12 inches again. Then this is where the third flare will start. Then it will go all the way to the end. Like I said earlier, my lining is not a full lining. So the last flare is going to start 2 inches above where the second flare stops. So I hope you guys understand this part. If you have any question, just ask me in the comment section. I'm going to open up the skirt, then I'll extend the lines. Extending this line is very important to me because when I'm sewing the skirt, I'm going to follow this line. The next thing I'm going to show you guys is how to cut the flare. So here is a simple way you can cut your flare without doing so much calculation. I'm going to fold my fabric into 2. Okay, then I'll fold it again. I'm going to fold it into 4. I'll be cutting a 360-degree flare. If you're not so used to working with organza, please make sure you iron it first. Organza is a bit difficult to work with, so you will have to be very careful when you're cutting. Before I show you guys how to cut the flare, I want to quickly talk about how to get the width of the flare. So for the first flare, I'm going to get the waist measurement for the front and back. Okay, that will be the width of the first flare. So for the second flare, I'm going to measure the width of the skirt, okay, for the front and back after removing my sewing allowance. Okay, that will be the width of the second flare. Now for the third flare, the width is going to be the width of the skirt after removing my sewing allowance for the front and for the back. So that's how you get the width of the first, second and the third flare. So let's move over to how to cut the flare. To cut the first flare, I'm going to divide my waist measurement by 4. I added extra inches so I can pleat it. Okay, so I'm placing my tape exactly where 12 inches is. Then from the top of the folded part, I'm going to get the length. I got 10 inches. I'll go to the side and measure 10 inches. Then I'll also measure 10 inches on the center. I'm going to use my chalk to connect it. I'll measure it to know if it's exactly the measurement I want. If it's excess, I'll go up a bit by 2 inches. So I'm making it 8 inches now. I'll measure 8 inches on the center and also on the other side. Okay, I'll connect it and check if it's the measurement I want. After measuring it, I noticed it's exactly the measurement I want, so I had to go ahead and cut it out. So this is the second flare. I totally forgot I've cut the first flare already. So this is the second flare, and the width of the skirt is about 48. That's why it's 12 inches. For the first flare, I added allowance for pleats, and the length of the flare is 14 inches. I'm done cutting the flare. I went ahead to cut out the sleeve because the sleeve is also a flare sleeve. So I've cut out all the flare. The next thing is to start sewing. It's time to start sewing. The first thing I'm going to do is to turn the neck of the top. I'm going to turn the neck and also the down part. I'll go ahead and turn it, then I'll show you guys what it looks like. I'm done sewing the front neck here, so the next thing I'll do is to mark the center front so that I can fix elastic on it. The length of the elastic will be about 5 inches. From the v-neck, come down by ½ inch, then start sewing your elastic until you get to ½ inch before the end of the top. If you don't want your elastic to show, you can go ahead and create a channel for it. So I'll go to my sewing machine and sew this, then I'll show you guys the finished result. I'm done sewing in the elastic and this is what it looks like. Now if you don't want your tummy to show so much, you can use elastic of about 6 or 7 inches. The next thing I'm going to do is to turn the neck of the back, then I'll go ahead and fix my zip. I'm done sewing the back here and this is what it looks like. So I'll go ahead and join the shoulder of both the front and the back. So this is what the front looks like and this is what the back looks like. So as you're sewing this organza fabric, please do well and also iron. Okay, so I'll go ahead and join the shoulder and the sides. I'm done joining the shoulder here and I also went ahead to join the sides as well. I added 1.5 inches allowance, so I just went ahead to sew it. I used a long zip for this top. I used a kind of zip that can open all the way to the length of the top. The last thing I'm going to do for this top is to join my sleeves. After joining the sleeves, I'll show you guys how to sew the skirt. I've gone ahead to join the sleeves. You can choose a different kind of sleeves for this. My material was just not enough. That's why I had to go for this sleeve. So the next thing is to show you guys how to sew the skirts. For my skirts, the first thing I did is to join the sides of the front and the back lining. Then the next thing I did is to fix the first flare. So if I have any excess, I'm going to pleat it into the lining. I'll go ahead and fix the first flare, then I'll show you guys how to fix the second and the third flare. I'm done fixing the first flare. For the second flare, I had to mark it all the way to the back so that it will be very easy for me to sew. For the second flare, I'm going to turn it upward, and so if I don't turn it upward, the rough edges will show, so it needs to be covered. I'll do the same thing for the third flare. I'm done fixing the second and the third flare here, and this is what it looks like. So the last thing I'm going to do now is to close the center, fix my zip and my band. I'm done closing the back here. I went ahead to fix my zip and also the band. For the band, I used 1.5 inches. After sewing, I'll go ahead and weave both the outside and the inside so that the skirt and the top will look neat. So this is the end of this tutorial. I hope you learned something. If you have any question, ask me in the comment section. Please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. I'll see you guys in my next video. Meanwhile, this is the finished result of this two-piece. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.